Do you like the Arcane stat?
I sure do. You can build bleed, poison, and a ridiculous amount of other setups with it. But what if I told you there's a way to make an Arcane build so absurdly strong that you can delete bosses with literally one button? Sounds impossible, right? Well, stick around because I'm about to prove it. In this video, you'll learn how to drill bosses into the afterlife, why Arcane builds are not just about bleed, and most importantly, how to dominate Elden Ring after just a couple of hours of gameplay. So grab a snack, get comfy, and let's dive right in. So you are thinking, where do you even start with a build like this? Glad you asked, because the setup is actually really simple. First, we begin with the class. Pick Samurai. It has the perfect balance of stats for our early game starter weapon, and of course take the Golden Seed as your keepsake because we want as many flasks as possible right from the beginning. Once you spawn in, grab the crafting kit from Kale, then head straight to Gatefront Ruins. Here you will unlock Melina, level ups, Torrent, and you will also get the Wet Blade Knife, which lets you put Ashes of War on your early weapons. This is where the run actually begins. Next, we are going to need a good chunk of runes. If you want to see the fastest early game rune route, check out the video on screen. After you level up a bit and reach around level 50, your stats should look something like this. This gives us the right stat spread we need for the drill build, letting the weapon hit hard while still keeping the setup smooth for the next steps. Now, after leveling, our next goal is to get the main highlight of the run, the Arcane Executioner Sword. The problem is that this monster is being guarded by Elemer of the Briar, one of the most annoying early game bosses in Elden Ring. This guy is a nightmare for Night Rain players, hits harder than 1,000 rejections of your CV, and floats around the arena like he is practicing circus tricks, and throws his red telekinetic Beyblade slash every 5 seconds. Trust me, the moment you see that red spin animation, you will understand the pain. There is no chance to kill the boss right now and get our weapon. So before getting the Giga Chad weapon, we need to get a little Chad weapon to kill the big one. And for that, we need the Regalia of Aocade. It uses the exact same skill, Aocade's Dancing Blade, and I have a fun trick to get it extremely early. To get this weapon, we need to get to Gatefront Ruins Grace, and ride all the way to the Third Church of Marika. Grab the Flask of Wondrous Physic. After that, head east toward the shoreline. From here, just follow exactly what I show in the video. You will ride up a hidden cliff path, jump across a weird rock formation, and climb right up the side of the map. And just like that, without fighting anything, you now have the early drill blade in your hands. This is the Regalia of Aocade. It is a straight sword that scales with dexterity and arcane, has the same signature drill attack as the Executioner's Sword, and it hits way harder than its size suggests. You cannot infuse it or buff it with consumables, but its damage scales off your total attack rating, which makes it perfect for preparing the real build later. Enough talking, let's test this baby, and our lab rat will be Magritte. So we walk up to Margit, rev up the drill, slam the L2, and the boss just looks at us like we poked him with a toothbrush. Man, this thing does no damage at all. What happened? Alright, we are getting ahead of ourselves. I know you are excited to try the weapon, I was too, but this blade needs upgrades before it can actually start shredding anything. Here are the locations of the somber smithing stones you need to make that happen. Now that the drill is upgraded, let us try this again. Walk back to Margit, fire up the spin, and look at that. This thing is actually juicing him up. It is shredding him like a blender on maximum setting. Poor Margit is getting mixed into a smoothie. This is the power we were looking for. With Margit out of the way and the drill finally doing real damage, our next step is getting all the talismans, items, and buffs that turn this build from strong into truly ridiculous. Let us get into it. And the first thing we need there is some buffs and talismans, and to even cast any buff, we need a seal. And since this entire build leans heavily into the arcane stat, our best option is the Dragon Communion Seal. This thing is perfect for us because it scales incredibly well with arcane, even better than faith at lower levels, which means every point you put into arcane boosts the power of your buffs. It has no weight, it cannot be infused, and it upgrades with somber stones, which makes it very easy to maintain. Most importantly, this seal increases the power of Dragon Communion incantations by 15%, giving us more status buildup and more damage from anything arcane related. You can get it right at the start of the game inside Fringe Folk Hero's Grave by using 2 Stone Sword keys, heading up the tunnel past the chariot, and defeating the Banished Knight guarding the room at the end. Once you grab this seal, you now have everything you need to cast the core buffs that make our drill hit even harder. Now that we have our seal ready, let us talk about the buff spells we will actually cast with it. Since this build uses a lot of Arcane and just enough Faith to meet the requirements, these spells fit perfectly into the setup. Our main aura buff is Golden Vow, which requires 25 Faith to cast. Golden Vow boosts your attack by 15% and your damage negation by 10%, and it lasts for a full 80 seconds. It stacks beautifully with our other buffs, and every single hit of the drill takes advantage of that extra attack power, so it is always worth keeping active. Our body buff is Flame Grant Me Strength, and this one only needs 15 Faith, which is perfect because we are not going high Faith in this build. Flame Grant Me Strength gives you 20% more physical damage and 20% more fire damage for 30 seconds, and it even gives you a bit of stamina recovery on top of that. Since our drill does mostly physical damage, this buff is one of your biggest multipliers. Later in the game, if you want even more damage, you can switch to Blood Boil Aromatic. This is a consumable, so it has no stat requirements, and it hits like a truck. It boosts your physical damage by 30%, increases max stamina by 20%, but also makes you take 25% more damage. It is a high-risk, high-reward option, but if you want the highest possible drill damage, this is the stronger choice. We can also include offensive spells that benefit from arcane scaling, like Rotten Breath and Swarm of Flies. Rotten Breath requires 15 Faith and 12 Arcane, and it spreads Scarlet Rot over a huge area, dealing damage over time while you prepare your drill. Swarm of Flies requires 11 Faith and 16 Arcane, and it sends a cloud of blood flies that build bleed incredibly fast. Both of these spells scale well with Arcane, and they work perfectly as support tools for this build. With these buffs and spells combined, our drill hits far harder than it has any right to, and this is what turns the whole setup from strong into ridiculous. Now that we are fully jacked up with our buffs, let us talk about Talismans. This is the part where we start stacking everything that makes the drill hit like it is overcharged. The sword on its own is already cooking, but once we add the right talismans, it stops being reasonable. This is where the build starts getting stupid in a fun way, the kind of stupid that makes you question if the game intended this to work. Our first talisman is the Winged Sword Insignia. It boosts your damage the more hits you land, giving you plus 3%, then plus 5%, then plus 10% once the chain kicks in. Since our drill hits non-stop, this thing maxes out almost instantly. You can get it from the Clean Rot Knight in Stillwater Cave. Our second talisman is the Godfrey Icon. Eohade's Dancing Blade counts as a charge skill, and the icon gives plus 15% damage to charge skills. It is basically free damage for the drill. You can get it from Godfroy the Grafted in the Golden Lineage Everjail. Now, our third talisman would normally be the Shard of Alexander. The problem is, Alexander only drops it in Crumbling Farum Azula, which is way later than where we are right now. So instead, we use the Dragon Crest Shield Talisman +1, so we do not get our butt kicked when bosses decide to swing back. Once you reach Farum Azula and finish Alexander's quest, you can swap this out for the Shard. For the fourth slot, we go with Millicent's Prosthesis. It gives +5 dexterity and increases your damage with successive hits by +4%, +6%, and +11%. There is a catch though. If you take Millicent's Prosthesis, you cannot get the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia later because that one only drops if you help Millicent instead of killing her. The good news is that it does not really matter for this build. Combining Winged Sword Insignia with Millicent's Prosthesis is actually better than using the Rotten Winged version. The difference is only around 3%, which is tiny, so taking the Prosthesis early is the smarter move. Sorry Millicent, business is business. With this early talisman setup, every rotation of the drill scales harder, hits faster, and does more damage. And once you finally grab the Shard of Alexander later, the build reaches its peak. At this point, our build is already strong enough to take on Elemer of the Briar, so it is finally time to grab the real star of this video. But this part is going to be tricky because this guy is a massive pain in the butt to fight. Sadly, the old Poison Mist cheese on him has been patched, so we cannot just fart him to death anymore. We actually have to play the game and use brute force. This is going to be a drill-on-drill battle. Elemer is waiting for us at the top of the Shaded Castle, swinging around the original Arcane Executioner Sword like it is a toy. He has around the same Eohade's Dancing Blade skill we do. He throws the sword at you, reels it back, drills through your face, and he loves to mix it with shield charges and grab attacks. He also shrugs off bleed and frost pretty well, so our best bet is just staying on him, dodging his big swings, and stuffing him with our upgraded drill every time he whiffs. It is a messy fight, but once you learn his patterns and keep close, you will eventually out-drill him, and when he finally goes down, holy moly, that fight feels good. After all that nonsense, we walk away with his lunch money, his ego, and most importantly, the Arcane Executioner Sword. Looks like we are the better man after all. Now we can finally ditch our old straight sword. Regalia of Eohade did its job, but this thing is on a different level. Arcane Executioner Sword is a legendary greatsword that scales with strength and arcane, has 24 strength, 14 dexterity, and 23 arcane requirements, and comes with the same Eohade's Dancing Blade skill, but on a heavier, harder-hitting weapon. When you cast the skill, it infuses the sword with energy and flings it forward in a long corkscrew drill that hits multiple times and keeps spinning if you charge it. The damage is based on our total attack rating, which means all the strength, arcane, buffs, and talismans we stacked earlier directly boost every hit of the spin. It cannot be infused, it cannot be buffed with consumables, but that is fine, because this thing is already a monster with the setup we are using. Before we bring this blade into real boss fights, we need to power it up. Take it to the blacksmith and pump it all the way to +10 using somber smithing stones. Once you see that +10 on the Arcane Executioner Sword, that is when the build truly comes online. Now we can finally start drilling holes into bosses like a power drill. Everything feels great, until we run straight into a giant wall. Literally. The fire giant shows up, eats our best buff drill to the ankle, and does not die. The damage is good, but it is not quite where we want it yet. So what are we missing? That is right, the crystal tears. We have the sword, we have the buffs, we have the talismans, but we are still not juicing our flask of wondrous physic properly. In the next section, we will fix that and push this drill to its true limit. Alright, so let us talk about crystal tears. By this point, we are already in the mountaintops of the giants, probably holding the Haligtree medallion too, so this is when our flask of wondrous physic becomes a real damage steroid for the drill. Our first tier is almost always the thorny cracked tier. This one makes your attacks grow stronger the longer you keep hitting, and since the drill hits non-stop like a chainsaw on caffeine, the tier reaches max power almost instantly. It gives +9%, then +13%, then +20% more damage as you keep landing hits, and the effect lasts 3 minutes. It also stacks perfectly with Millicent's prosthesis and the winged sword insignia, giving you a massive ramp up the moment the drill starts spinning. For the second tier, you have options. If you want something simple, you can use the magic shrouding cracked tier. It gives +20% magic damage for 3 minutes, which adds a small boost since the Arcane Executioner Sword has a bit of magic damage in the spin. It is not huge, but it helps. But if you have the DLC, and if you still have money left after opening cases in Counter-Strike 2, then the blood-sucking cracked tier is the better pick. It gives +20% damage for 3 minutes, but it drains HP over time. Risky, yes, but the damage boost is worth every drop it steals. Once you mix these tiers into your flask, your build becomes fully roided. You pop the flask, rev up the drill, and the fire giant's foot instantly catches athlete's foot from how hard you are tearing into it. With the tiers mixed and all our buffs online, our drill build is fully powered and raring to go. But hold on, it feels like we are forgetting something. Wait, yeah, we definitely are. There is still one huge upgrade waiting for us much later in Crumbling Farum Azula, and that is the Shard of Alexander. Cue guitar music. Okay, sorry, got a little carried away there. By now we should be in Crumbling Farum Azula, which means we can finally grab this talisman for real. Just track down Iron Fist Alexander, smash him into paste, and yoink the Shard of Alexander straight off his corpse. This thing gives a massive boost to skill damage, and for our drill build, that is exactly what we want. And while we are here, make sure you bring a couple of sleeping pots. This place also has one of the most brain-dead boss fights in the entire game, the Godskin duo, and putting them to sleep makes the fight way less painful. Grab the shard, deal with the duo. With that, we are almost at our full power. Oh my gosh, we have been talking about damage, buffs, drills, bosses, and talismans, and we completely forgot something important. Our drip, our fashion. The thing that separates a regular tarnished from a tarnished who kills bosses with style. So let us fix that. Now the safest choice here is just going for high poise armor like the veteran set. Big chunky knight energy, you barely flinch, and it helps you tank through hits while the drill is spinning. But you know what? That is boring. We are using the Arcane Executioner Sword, so let us commit to the bit. Let us go full Briar Knight mode. The Briar set looks amazing with this build, and you can buy it right after defeating Elemer of the Briar. It has solid defenses, a big 47 poise, and it even deals chip damage when you dodge roll into enemies. It is not the tankiest set in the world, but the style points and theme synergy are through the roof. You literally look like the edgy, overworked knight who has been drilling bosses for 14 hours straight. But if you are more into raw damage and you have the DLC, which means you spent your money on something better than Discord Nitro for once, then you can swap to the Dancer's set. Each piece of this set boosts all dancing type attacks by 2.5%, and since our weapon skill is Eohade's Dancing Blade, yes, it actually counts. The full set gives you a total of 10% more damage if you wear all 4 pieces. The armor is light, flashy, and makes you look like a magical ballerina who decided to strap a power drill to their hands. It is ridiculous, and I love it. And if you want both fashion and danger, the Rakshasa set is another DLC option. This one is crazy because each armor piece gives 2% more damage, but also makes you take 2% more damage. If you wear all 4 pieces, that is 8% more damage dealt and 8% more damage taken. You basically become a glass cannon in samurai demon armor. It is stylish, aggressive, and if you play clean, it is worth the risk. So whether you want poise, fashion, or pure DPS, you have options. The important part is that now we look good while turning bosses into shish kebab. Alright, now that we have our armor sorted out, let us take a look at our total damage stacking to see how insane this drill has become. Playing this build is unbelievably simple. It looks flashy, it looks complicated, but the actual gameplay is smoother than butter on a frying pan. Here is how you run it. First, you always start by buffing up. Pop Golden Vow for the 15% damage and 10% damage negation. Cast Flame Grant Me Strength or Blood Boil Aromatic for that juicy physical boost the drill absolutely loves. Drink your flask of Wondrous Physic with the Thorny Crack tier and whatever second tier you picked. Then finish with whatever offensive spells you want to prep, like Rotten Breath or Swarm of Flies if you are feeling fancy. Once everything is active, now you walk into the boss arena like you own the place. From here, the rule is simple. Wait for an opening. Any opening. Send the boss directly to the Shadow Realm. If the boss only throws a light attack at you, you do not back away. You do not panic roll. You trade. This build has enough poise, enough damage, and enough sustain that you can take a small hit just to land the full drill. Trading one tiny hit for 20 plus drill hits is always worth it. That is how this build works. You punish every mistake the boss makes, even the tiny ones. And just like that, the boss melts. The drill spins, the numbers splash, and the health bar evaporates. Most bosses will not survive 2 casts, and a lot of them will not even survive 1. That is the entire gameplay loop. Buff up, walk in, look for the opening, drill, repeat. No fancy combos, no input gymnastics, just pure, unstoppable spin-to-win destruction. Alright, now let us take everything we've built so far and actually show you how insane the damage gets when every single buff, talisman, tear, and armor bonus stacks together. This is where the Arcane Executioner Sword stops being a weapon and starts acting like a boss deleting machine. We begin with the raw numbers. Our sword hits for 230 physical and 149 magic before any buffs. That is our base. Now watch how fast this climbs. Golden Vow comes first and boosts our attack by 15%, giving us an immediate jump in power. Then Flame Grant Me Strength adds another 20% physical damage. These two alone already make the drill noticeably stronger before we even touch our talismans. Once we start stacking the talismans, the multipliers get crazy. Shard of Alexander gives 15% more skill damage. Godfrey Icon adds 15% because the drill is a charged skill. Winged Sword Insignia ramps up to 10% more damage as the drill hits non-stop. Millicent's Prosthesis gives +5 dexterity and up to 11% more damage from consecutive hits. Then the tiers join in. The Thorny Cracked tier ramps to 20% more damage during long hit strings. And if you are using the Bloodsucking Cracked tier from the DLC, that is another 20% boost as long as you can handle the HP drain. Even your armor can contribute. The Dancer's set gives up to 10% more damage to dancing attacks, and yes, Eohade's Dancing Blade counts as one. When all of this stacks together, our physical damage shoots up from 230 to around 812, and our magic rises from 149 to around 299. That is a combined attack rating of roughly 1,111 AR per hit. But the drill does not hit once. A fully charged Eohade's Dancing Blade hits around 22 times on most bosses. So when you multiply the per hit damage by those hits, you end up with a total burst of roughly 24,000 to 32,000 damage in a single cast, depending on how many hits connect and which tiers you are using. That is why bosses evaporate the moment the drill touches them. That is why health bars disappear like they forgot to load. And that is why this build sits right next to every OP meta setup people swear is broken this patch. Everything we stacked, every buff, every tier, every talisman, all multiplies into one move, one spin, one drill. And that is what makes the Arcane Executioner Sword, whatever the meta wants to call, overpowered this week. This whole build was wild from start to finish. We took a spinning greatsword that everyone sleeps on and turned it into a boss-deleting power drill. We grabbed an early game toy blade and used it to bully Elmer out of his own legendary weapon. We stacked buffs, talismans, and tiers that had no business multiplying this hard. We turned Arcane into raw force. We made a drill that melts health bars faster than the game can render them, and everything we learned along the way stacked into that one perfect spin that deletes bosses like they are made of cardboard. If you made it all the way here, grab a snack, get comfy, and smash that like button with the force of a fully charged Eocade's dancing blade. Subscribe so you do not miss the next build, because we are just getting started. And if you want more broken setups, more one-shot guides, or more ridiculous Elden Ring experiments, you are in the right place. Drop a comment telling us which boss annoyed you the most and who you want to see get drilled into the dirt next. This is Hawk Live Gaming. Thanks for watching, legends. See you in the next one.